I don't know if you've noticed this, but there's a lot of Christmas stuff up in stores, a lot of Christmas music, Christmas commercials happening in early November. I'm I'm kind of a big believer. I'm a traditionalist that you should only start the Christmas season on Black Friday and then continue that through Christmas. You want to let Thanksgiving have its moment. You also want to let my birthday, which was Monday, have its moment. Personal. So I realize everybody doesn't celebrate my birthday, but Thanksgiving, right? So, and I bring this up because typically when we were getting schedule drops from MLS, it was happening much later than today. Today is November 20th. This feels like the accelerated Christmas of what should be, I mean, again, MLS Christmas in a way. Well, there's several MLS Christmases. There's the MLSPA salary drop where all the nerds get to figure out like how much players are being paid and what happens with salary caps and all that. But scheduled release days are nerdy days. And again, this was something where Austin FC used to celebrate this a lot more. I mean, a lot of the teams in the league used to celebrate this a lot more. There were much more elaborate scheduled drops, videos, things like that, just even 4 or 5 years ago in, dare I say it, the early 2020s.
I don't know, Phil. I feel like you've got to celebrate a time of abundance. And what MLS has been trying to tell us for a long time is that it's always a time of abundance. It's always MLS Christmas. The MLS Christmas that you're looking for was inside your heart the whole time.
Emergency podcast. Verde did a thing, so we gotta talk about it. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency. Emergency podcast. Shut up, oh yeah, shut up, oh yeah, shut up. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency.
Hey, a hearty hello to you all, and welcome to Emergency Podcast, the Austin FC podcast, where we talk about all the Austin FC emergencies. It is a Thursday evening. We do not normally record on a Thursday evening, but we have a halfway legitimate emergency in that we got a schedule drop, which was a little surprising. We actually got tipped off to it with Atlanta United with a post that had just yoga day circled on November 20th on a calendar, which I thought was a nice touch. Nice touch by the Atlanta folks. Moisés, how are you doing and how are you commemorating this MLS schedule drop day?
I'm treating it like pretty much any other Thursday and peeked in at Austin's various other teams and am just kind of soaking it all in. And something I've said for a long time is there's no reason that the schedule couldn't drop this early. And the answer that a lot of people would give me when I would say something like that is, but it always drops in December. And I'm like, yes, it doesn't have to. I mean,
Right.
it could in a civilized world drop right around the time a regular season ends in advance of the following season,
Right.
not just because the playoffs have been this Bataan death march for so long where it's just never ending and absolutely
This
torturous.
paused baton death march. We'll get to the marching on Saturday, I suppose, right? So we've just been holed up in a kind of a campsite,
Yeah.
a kind of way station between elements of the Baton Death March. So yes, let's get into it. So I've got an article that is up as you are listening to this, hopefully in your podcast. So you can follow along in a way if you like. So what I've done is I've taken a pretty cursory look at the schedule and then a little bit more developed look at the schedule. And I've come up with the three best things about this particular schedule for Austin FC in 2026, and then the three worst things. I'm going to hit them one by one and want you to react to those. And then, Moises, I know that you've been looking at a lot of the other league stuff and you've made some interesting observations there. So we're going to fan out from Austin to the rest of the league. But let's start with a Sunday afternoon in early March against the Wooden Spoon winners. That is the second game of the season. Our home opener is going to be on opening weekend. It is against Minnesota. You will be reminded that was a matchup that happened in 2024 that featured possibly the worst half of soccer I've ever seen Austin FC play. As much of you maybe remembered how weird that was. But then after that, they host DC United in the second game of the season, a team that is still going to be trying to figure out what they are and what they were this last year was pretty bad. So thoughts on that to ease into the season maybe a little bit?
Yeah, I think the broader thing that I have been looking at, and this will be the theme of a lot of what I've been paying attention to, looking at the schedules for a lot of different clubs and the way that certain things have been marketed, is that this almost certainly, unless for some reason in the shortened 2027 spring season, this happens again, this is probably the last time that you will see Austin hosting Minnesota at home for the home opener in February. Now, I didn't
Right.
say for the home opener ever, because they could host Minnesota in late July for a home
Right.
opener, right? But it's also the two aspects of this are one, for Austin to host Minnesota in a home opener in February again, there's literally one more chance after this year. And that would be a real weird vibe for them to go, hey, guess what? We're going to roll out the same home opener that one of the clubs had for the shortened blitz season. That'd be strange. The other aspect of it is there's no guarantee in 2027 that Austin will play Minnesota in Austin necessarily.
Yeah.
Not just for the shortened
That's right.
season, but the start of the new MLS 4.0 world of things.
Mhm.
So on its face, sure, it is 100% a 2024 retread in terms of the club lineup. In terms of who's coaching, not the same coaches. Different thing. Also, rather different lineups in some respects. Though certain members of the Minnesota squad are going to stay the same, so certain members of the Austin squad are going to be the same. As much as it may look like the same thing on paper, this is the beginning of the next phase of things. And I think that it is a more interesting retread than other home opener retreads that could have happened for year 6.
Sure. Like St. Louis, for example, or Kansas
St.
City.
Louis. Yeah, or Kansas City.
Right.
Right.
And then there's also going to be lots of eyes on Austin FC on April 4th, not necessarily because of Austin FC, but because they are going to help usher in Miami Freedom Park's home debut. Of course, the brand new stadium that's being built in Miami. Will it be ready by April 4th? Sure hope so. First 6 matches Miami will play in 2026 will be on the road, which means that they're going to get a whole glut of home matches as they try to close out the season and maybe try to host an MLS Cup in Miami Freedom. But that first game, it's going to be Inter Miami against Austin. So Messi, of course, not coming to Austin until maybe 2027, 2028. We'll see what happens. But in the meantime, if you do want to go see him, you can make the trip to Miami. You can enjoy Miami things. And it's probably likely that since it doesn't involve Austin and Q2 or All-Star Weekend, that Messi will actually be on the field.
Yeah, there's some doubt that went around social media that Messi would necessarily play. Oh, well, he didn't play in the All-Star game. The opening of Miami Freedom Park is an enormous deal for his club. And just because he was invited to and on the roster to play in the MLS All-Star game, that didn't make that remotely as big of a deal as something that, frankly, this is one of the biggest events, aside from his signing, in Inter Miami history. And plenty of messy doubt has cropped up where people even push back on that, where they've said, well, but he's going to play with the Argentine national team just a week before. He's not going to just show up to play against Austin. Again, the opening of Miami Freedom Park is a huge, huge deal for that club, for MLS. It is arguably a much, much bigger deal than literally any MLS All-Star game. Any of them.
Yep.
Even one that theoretically he would play in. It is something that is directly, deeply tied to the club that he signed with, even though, as we know, with all signings going through the MLS central government, everybody is technically having their contract held by the league. Whatever. On a technicality, sure. But in specific, the relationships that these players have with their clubs is something that is very big, especially when it comes to something that is as meaningful to Miami as a city, in addition to the club, that is happening in a World Cup year, that is happening in advance of this country hosting a World Cup, that honestly, various of the preparations that have happened have been a result of the most recent Men's World Cup that he was very much a big part of. and his signing to MLS raised the profile of U.S. top flight soccer is more serious about things. In the same way that the other night, just as pundits were railing against MLS players and players in MLS not being able to keep up, then all of a sudden, 4 different MLS players were making the difference in World Cup qualifying matches or World Cup lead-in matches on the international stage, where U.S. players were not being expected to perform as well as they did. MLS players were part of teams that fought hard and made it into playoff matches. We mentioned this on the last episode, but as much as people expected that the 2026 World Cup was going to be the just add water of make soccer a big thing, it's happening, but it's not happening in exactly the way that I think people expected it to, if that makes sense.
I think it does. Yeah. All right. And then speaking of giant tournaments that many eyes are upon, Copa Tejas. I think that's going to be decided. It's definitely going to be decided no later than September 19th, because that is the last match in Austin's share of things, where Austin is playing at Frisco. If you are looking for the Austin matches for Copa Tejas, August 15th is when Dallas comes. July 25th, Austin is going to Houston. And then Austin hosts Houston way, way early. That's April 25th. There's still going to be a good stretch of the season left when Copa Tejas is hoisted, but at least we're going to know that. It's not as compressed maybe as past seasons. We don't really have maybe the rivalry weeks that we've had in years past. I haven't really looked at the rest of the schedule to see if they're touting that necessarily at the other team schedules.
Dallas is touting hosting the first Texas Derby matchup of the year on March 21st against Houston, which to them, that is the Texas Derby, and the city of Austin doesn't exist or count. Dallas has a weird thing going on in that their stadium is under construction, and so they have 0 home matches for the entirety of obviously June, but also July and August. They don't play a home match following their May 13th home match against Vancouver. Dallas does not play again in the oven until September 5th.
Is that when they're going to raise the roof, as it were?
Apparently so. Yeah, citing the massive construction that is going on in Dallas, they're not going to have another home match until then. And I want to double check this, but I want to say that home match against Austin on September 19th is the last Copa Tejas match, but Copa Tejas could be decided before they have the opportunity to play Austin again in Frisco. And I'm going to look this up, but that big thing is the most interesting thing on the Dallas side of things to me about what we're looking at for 2026. The Houston release is mostly about buying tickets.
Yeah.
It leads with, by the way, tickets. You should buy tickets. And if you want to buy tickets, you could buy tickets. And we sure wouldn't mind it if you would buy tickets.
It's headlined, Houston Dynamo FC announced thrilling 2026 MLS regular season schedule. And then it talks about, that's a good question. Open the season with 2 home matches at Shell Energy Stadium, hosting a cross-conference matchup versus Chicago Fire FC. Of course, now they're just throwing that in our face because apparently we're never going to play Chicago in the regular season. Followed by a star-studded matchup versus Sun Heung-min and LAFC February 28th. Come see another player you would rather see than one of our Houston players.
Okay, so
and by the way, buy tickets.
There is a latest Copa Tejas match that has nothing to do with Austin. It will be in Houston against Dallas on Saturday, October 17th. So on a day that in previous years has been decision day, that late in the year, it could take all the way until that final match. But the way that the 3 different clubs' schedules play out, and I'm sure that someone will beat me on the math on this, at least at a glance, to me, it seems like much more of the impetus on Copa Tejas is on Austin to define it. Their schedule holds most of the matches earlier, even with the disruption as relates to the Dallas construction. But since the first match happens in March in Frisco, and then the second match happens literally a month later in Austin, both of them involve Houston. If Houston loses both of those matches, they may very well be mathematically eliminated by that point.
Mm-hmm.
If the early match is a draw and the Austin match is a win, that then puts the impetus on how does Austin come back from the World Cup break in July. It's something that I think this is a season about proving something for Austin in a different way than previous seasons has been. There are various different trends that got bucked, and Copa Tejas was what Copa Tejas was. But I don't know, the way that things are laid out, even with the big World Cup break, I like the way that it is set up where it doesn't look like an easy Copa Tejas schedule for much of anybody. There are downsides to all of it. And I think that an early loss is something that sets one or another of the teams involved on their back heels. Because Frisco is going to they have to be kings of the road literally in the middle of the season during the hottest summer months, then come home to Dallas in September, which is not that much cooler, right?
Yeah, I was going to say maybe it's a blessing, but yeah, maybe it's not.
Maybe.
Oh, I also thought of something too here. We could have a repeat of 2023 where Austin backs into Copa Tejas. They could theoretically be sitting in a position where Houston and Dallas draw, and then Austin picks up the trophy as a result.
Well,
I remember that fondly. I remember that press conference where Josh Wolf was talking about winning Copa Tejas, and that felt
sure
flat.
Did
it was
our
weird.
Way into that, said Josh. Like looking at Dallas's schedule, Austin's schedule starts with 2 home games, one against Minnesota, one against DC. Dallas also starts with 2 home games, one against Toronto, one against Nashville, which even if Toronto has a really great offseason when it comes to signing and rebuilding and everything, I don't know how much stronger they're going to be. Dallas just got through declining a ton of options, and they seem to be rebuilding a bit themselves. And then their third match, they go on the road to LAFC, and then they come home to play San Diego, Houston back to back.
I would contend that Dallas still kept a lot of their core. Sebastian Lletget was probably the biggest name that they let go, and he hasn't really been a factor for years. Right.
Yeah, I mean,
or faithful, but that's a different story.
Yeah, props to Becky G, the real OG. Looking at Dallas's schedule, are they fortunate to be facing 2 of what I think people are going to assume are still among the tougher clubs in the league in LAFC, one of them away and one of them at home, and San Diego that early just to get it over with, get past it, and then have a run of 3 home matches in the middle of April against St. Louis Galaxy and Minnesota, a Galaxy that in theory has Ricky Puig back. That's how they're advertising it for sure. Their May is not super easy. They go away to New Jersey to play the Red Bulls, and then they play Salt Lake and Vancouver back to back. Then they go away to San Jose and Colorado. So you have to play on the worst pitch in MLS, and then at Elevation 7 days later to begin your all away Jag that does not end for literally 3 months.
Yeah, could be rough times at Frisco.
Yeah, I think that the first chunk of their season is not especially favorable as compared to what I consider to be a pretty serious disadvantage of having to be on the road for the majority of the meat in the sandwich of the season. That's what Frisco's season says to me, and why I think that Austin has an opportunity to reset expectations around, for example, what that away match against Frisco is going to be like, where Austin has been so legendarily cursed in that stadium. Maybe the rebuilding of the stadium somehow releases some of the spirit magic, and something suddenly changes next year. I don't know. Like flipping things over to Houston, they've got Chicago and LAFC right off the top. How lucky are they? And then they go away to New England, and then they host Portland, and then they go away to Dallas, and then they have Seattle, and then they go away to Colorado and then Orlando, and then they host San Diego at home, and then they finish April in Austin.
So their first road match is away at New England.
Their first road match is away at New England, first weekend of March.
Do you know who else went? Away to New England from
Who
Houston?
Else went away
recently?
to New England?
Josh Wolf doing an interview for a head coaching job that he did not get. So I'm sure that's going to be a little awkward.
I think hey, all the best to him, and I hope that experience of interviewing for that job helps feed whatever his next step of his coaching journey might be. And who knows, by the beginning of this season, he might be head coach of some team in the league. It could happen.
Like DC United.
I don't know. I don't know.
That has been your working theory for a while.
It's been my working theory, and it'd be hilarious if it happened before the season started and Josh Wolf was the opposing coach in the second game of the season.
Yeah, that would be. Yeah, I don't feel like that's going to happen, but
okay. I don't feel like it's going to happen, but it could. It very much could.
Well, and anything is possible. All right, so let's talk about things that I do not like and see if you do not like them either.
Okay.
The early East away trips. So March 7th at Charlotte, which to me doesn't seem like a particularly appealing road journey in any way, shape, and form. Miami, April 4th. I mean, again, that is possibly the best of the three, but then we also have April 18th in Toronto. That could be anything weather-wise. Toronto is a fantastic city. That seems a little early. If that was, say, a June trip, that might be a little bit more favorable. And then there's also the matter of the away trip to San Diego, which I know is one of the more popular destinations. That, my friends, this year is on a Wednesday. It is May 13th. Not only is it a Wednesday, but it's 3 days after Minnesota away. So yeah, they have to go to Minnesota and then 2 days rest and to San Diego. So that doesn't seem like a lot of fun.
Well, okay. So here I think I will definitely counter you in a couple of ways. Charlotte away, North Carolina in early March could be absolutely incredible weather. Is likely going to be absolutely incredible weather, beautiful sunsets. Charlotte's a lovely city. North Carolina's nice. The Mint City fans of Charlotte seem like very nice people. I got no problem with that one.
Lovely's doing a lot of work there, but okay.
The fans are nice people.
Fans are nice. I mean,
I had very pleasant interactions with them. But
Sir Minty's cool.
Yeah, the general vibe of that area is cool. Like North Carolina gets a bad rap, like various other states like Texas.
And if you enjoy big NFL stadiums, well, they have one.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Where they play soccer.
That's the big downside. But I mean, look, then we're slagging off a third of the teams in MLS for not playing in soccer specific stadiums, but that's its own subject.
But we could go there too. But
speaking of soccer specific stadiums, I think that away trip to Miami, I feel like for the scale of experience that it's going to be, it will reward folks who want to make that kind of trip in the same way that I didn't even realize that when Austin played that 50th anniversary Whitecaps match, that was the commemorative 50th anniversary Whitecaps match. I wish I could have gone on that trip. Like that kind of experience is what I would classify the opening of Miami Freedom Park as. That's
the 5-1 mouse on the field game, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. To me, this away date that is Miami's first home game of that season, that look, if Austin upsets them at their home opener, even juicier narrative to that. Sure. But even if Austin were to lose or draw against a Miami that is going to be uniquely on point because they don't want to be embarrassed at their big gala, it's a different and special kind of energy and vibes that you wouldn't get from it just being an away match, even with Messi expected or guaranteed to play. I don't know. I think there's something that heightens that kind of experience. To your point about Toronto, I know Toronto very, very well. And it could be anything from lovely, pleasant spring weather to an absolute ice storm to an absolute snowstorm, literally based on very recent years' experiences during that precise time. Okay, I have to agree on one thing universally, which is San Diego away on a Wednesday is a crime that should be punished. Yeah. Like there should be a special MLS rule against that kind of absolute robbery of what I think would otherwise be probably a better attended away trip for another MLS fan base. I don't know. It's just, that's the way that things fall together, and there is no month of June anymore. So something's got to fall through the cracks.
One additional crime. So the Toronto game does not coincide with an American League champion Blue Jays home game.
I'm aware.
They are on the road.
I'm thoroughly aware. That was literally the first thing I checked. The first thing I checked is April 18th, also a Blue Jays home game, and it is not.
They are on the road in Arizona that weekend.
Yeah. What else do you dislike about this schedule, Phil?
Okay, well, there is end of season congestion. There's 7 matches.
You can say that again.
October 10th and November 7th. which are the last 7 matches of the season.
Yeah.
And this is how this lines up. This is wild. Okay, so they are hosting Nashville, and then 4 days later, on a Wednesday, they are at LAFC, and then they come home 3 days later to host Vancouver, then get possibly a little bit of a breather, but it is away at Kansas City. So
Unless a
again, that could.
rescheduled game has to go in between them.
So you could have 8 games in that. Kansas City in October, I'm not sure what the weather is going to be like. Weather could be turning at that point as well. And then you get another Saturday, and the Wednesday is the home game, and that is against RSL. So another late season match against RSL at home. And then Halloween, it is at the Galaxy again. Definitely Ricky Pooch, unless he, God forbid, gets injured again, will be featuring in that game. And then decision day will be November 7th this year. That will be a Saturday. That will be a 6 p.m. game hosting the Timbers. So
And
as I will
who
remind you,
knows? There
Austin
could
did not do that well against the Timbers this year. So there is
and
that.
and of course, with there being a Wednesday sandwiched between that Halloween game and decision day,
Yep.
if something has to get rescheduled because of cup runs or whatever, then
Could be there.
yeah, instead of 7 matches, it could be 8, it could be 9. Which
That's going to be a grueling month. But
yeah.
at least it comes at the end of the season.
The thing is, looking at various other clubs are similarly super jammed up like this. Now,
Mhm.
I would not be as concerned about it if the July through November that we're looking at in 2026, if that were the first half of a regular season.
Yeah.
That would, in theory, make it so that the second half of the season in the new MLS 4.0 structure would have a little bit more breathing room. But then if you dial back and you look, you've got anything other than a 5-match month is an exception and not the rule. You've got 5 matches in April, 5 matches in May, 5 in August and September. The big outliers are 1 at the very end of February and 2 at the end of July. It makes me nervous, man. Makes me nervous.
All right. And then also, so last thing I'm going to come down on a little bit. So there's no home matches between May 16th and July 22nd. Of course, that is largely because of the World Cup break. The whole league is taking essentially a 2-month break in between late May and late July. So May 23rd, those are going to be the last matches. And then we get into World Cup land. But the World Cup actually starts June 11th. So why would they need so much time between May 23rd and June 11th? What could possibly fit into that window
May 23rd and
that
June
MLS would want to
11th.
promote? Could this be where Leagues Cup
But
fits in?
the reason I think that is unlikely is if you want Leo Messi to play in Leagues Cup, is he going to play in it if it's right before the World Cup?
No, he is not. Yeah.
No.
Okay. But I'm
Like,
trying to figure out where they're going to fit Leagues Cup because I cannot figure.
here's what I think and would hope is that in a rare instance of collaboration between MLS and US soccer, they squeeze a good chunk of Open Cup in before the World Cup.
Okay.
That way, some of that fixture congestion gets lifted off of the back half of the schedule. And it's the sort of thing that if the qualification is going to be similar, where the top of the top teams are in Leagues Cup and not the top of the top teams are in Open Cup, then you're not as worried about your huge international stars that are playing in a World Cup not feeling good about playing a tournament. But the other thing to me is that I feel like it's like an international break before the international break to give some of those guys some time to recuperate, rehab, do some conditioning, that sort of thing.
That makes some sense. Yeah.
But it would be interesting to see some exhibition games happen in that space, missing those top of the top stars, the guys whose national teams didn't make it into the World Cup or who didn't get into their national teams that are playing. It could be interesting. I don't know what they do with that little 2-week break other than something. The rest of the schedule is so packed.
Oh, I didn't even get out the rest of the statement. So, no matches between May 16th and July 22nd. And again, that is going to be true for half the teams in the league because, of course, half the teams will be hosting on the 23rd. But then after that July 22nd match, which is a match against Seattle, Austin doesn't host again until August 15th.
Uh-huh.
So, between May 22nd and August 15th, you've got two home games.
I mean,
And that home game coming back on August 15th is that match against Frisco.
I mean,
Oh, and then 4 days later, 4 days later, Austin goes to Seattle and then hosts Philadelphia. So that's fun.
3 days after that. Yeah.
Yeah,
It-
that's a hell of a
it's
Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday. Right?
August is kind of nuts for me. A team dealing with the climate that Austin is in August, I'd rather have two home matches instead of three. I'd rather have a total of three home matches in between the two entire months of July and August, frankly. The broader theory that I've got going is that what we're looking at is a temporally adjusted version of what we're going to see with the 2027 season, where
Yeah,
the June
or the
break,
2027, 28.
yeah, the 2027, the new full season break, but instead
Right.
we're playing the second half first and the first half second. If you look at this and pretend like we're starting in July, having two matches there, 5 matches a month for the next 2 months, 6
Mhm.
matches in October to cram stuff in before the healthy winter break, and
Yep.
then a match at the beginning of November. And then you speculatively go, they talked about playing them a little ways into November.
Yep.
Maybe they can go all the way up to almost Thanksgiving and then let college football and NFL have their biggest, hugest season once Thanksgiving sets in, the Christmas of American football, as it were.
Yeah.
And then you come back from that healthy winter break, very end of February, maybe a little bit earlier, depending on warmer climate venues that are available. And things play out kind of the way that we're looking at them, where May is just the month of MLS playoffs, and decision day
Mhm.
is on that April 25th weekend. You throw Leagues Cup, you start closer to mid-July rather than late July, and Leagues Cup becomes the midweek matches from the very beginning of the season for the clubs that are
Right.
in Leagues Cup. And
Yeah.
it just distributes things out such that there isn't that kind of impossible end of season fixture congestion that we saw for various clubs, including LAFC in 2025.
Right. Though that might force teams to travel too, especially if you're trying to host all the games in the
Yeah.
US. But do we have like more truncated Leagues Cup? Do we have some Mexican cities hosting? I would love for that to happen. I don't know just logistics wise if they would want to do that, but I think that would make it a much more interesting tournament if that happened. And I think certainly Mexican fans would be a lot more interested in it if that was the case. I realize that they're trying to put butts and seats in American stadiums and control everything by putting it north of the border, but is that really working now to the degree that it could? I mean,
Yeah. It bears mentioning, man. If all three of the US, Canada, and Mexico can host a World Cup next year, you would figure that something could be figured out in terms of having Mexican host stadiums for Leagues Cup and making it the truly international tournament, not just a tournament that happens to have international participants.
because with CONCACAF Champions League, you do have US teams and Canadian teams like traveling to Central America midweek and coming back. Like they're playing those games.
If we knew more of what's going on behind the curtain that prevents it, I guess we would know. So all we can do is speculate.
How invested in Leagues Cup are we, by the way? We keep worrying about where it will fit in. It seems like, in a way, it would make more sense to just drop it at this point if they're going to this fall spring calendar, because just with July to May, it seems really sort of untenable that they're going to do this. It's
Is
kind
there
of
an
2 month
international break? Is there an international break at the beginning of August? Because why does Austin go from having a match on August 1st to having one on August 15th and nothing in between?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Is that where they're going to end up putting it? That's where my head's at, is the thing.
Okay. But that makes it incredibly tight. So maybe it is a much less robust tournament this year. Maybe it is just kind of more confined and more contained. Yeah, that is really unusual. It's weird.
Because looking at August 1st is a Saturday, and then there are no league games for Austin until August 15th. So there's room for 3 match days there.
Mm-hmm.
And if other teams around the league similarly have that, if you ask me, that's where Leagues Cup goes. Because then, so 15th is a Saturday, 19th is a Wednesday, 22nd is a Saturday. And then there's no midweek game leading up to the Saturday, August
Yeah.
29th game. So you could do one Leagues Cup knockout game there. And then there's no early week match the following week. Yeah. So there's a Wednesday window, the final week of August, the first week of September, and then and then there's a Wednesday match at home against Colorado, Sunday night soccer in Vancouver, and then similarly no midweek game the week of the 19th, the Saturday
Yeah,
the 19th.
I think we've sleuthed this out. So
Yeah.
yeah, so a lot of the other, I'm looking at other schedules right now. Yeah, teams have a break between the 1st and the 15th or the 16th. After the World Cup, the next FIFA calendar window is September 21st through October 6th, and then again the 9th
Okay.
through 17th of November. So yeah.
So I think
That-
I think so September 21st you said is when it starts?
September 21st is when the first post World Cup international window starts. And then, June, July 27, Gold Cup is happening, and Africa Cup of Nations is actually happening in that break before what will be the start of the 27-28 season. So that's kind of an interesting lead into the start of that full season. In between the seasons, you're going to have Gold Cup happening. So
Yeah, the only hope they have of squeezing something in is taking advantage of those three match day windows in August, and then presumably doing a knockout round the final week of August and a final midweek the first week of September. I think if they do Leagues Cup, we are looking at a Leagues Cup final. But if that's when Leagues Cup is happening, when does the Open Cup happen?
yeah.
Is
that of any concern to
I'm going to officially lay my bet that they skip Leagues Cup next year completely, because I do not see how they mathematically fit it in. I don't see how it.
I don't either.
I don't see how they fit it in. They're not going to move the final all the way to the other side of decision day.
But Andy Loughnane said Leagues Cup is here to stay, so I take him as his word that somehow but here to stay, and that it's an institution, or here to stay, and that he knows that it's on the schedule for next year.
We're doing detective work here today. This is what I've learned. So I'm gonna excuse me, Mr. West. I just got a couple of questions for you. Could you check and see when the FIFA windows are before the World Cup break?
Yeah, I can do that.
Because I'm curious how maybe they squeeze
last
stuff
one.
in.
Last one is June 1st through 9th.
Before that. So I'm talking March, April, May. Are there FIFA international windows?
March 23rd through 31st.
Okay, so March 23rd through 31st, which, sure enough, we've got no league matches there. That's the playoff games. That's Ukraine, that's Albania, if I'm thinking Austin-centric. So they would be missing Svatok and Zuni, presumably. But if Leagues Cup were to start then and do a couple of matches, and then could they do Leagues Cup over 3 match days in August? Is that literally the only thing that makes sense? Does the World Cup window extend into July, right? Or
I mean, you have a team playing like the 2nd, 5th, and 8th. You have a team playing like the 3rd, 6th, and 9th. Do they try to just do matches every day and stagger through? Like, how many teams could they actually? I'm sure that most of our listeners are probably just willing to scrap it at this point, and the rest maybe are just waiting until this actually gets
happy with the notion of scrapping Leagues Cup completely. I'm just trying to figure out where it and Open Cup both fit in a schedule this packed that lacks one entire month of the calendar.
2 entire months.
2 entire months of the calendar, right? And boy,
It's hard to do.
they better hope that Open Cup runs on a relatively similar schedule and they throw Open Cup stuff during that international break, that early international break in March, because things get stickier and weirder and more difficult. There's a midweek spot in April. There's
Well, the other thing too,
yeah,
I'm just thinking about this with that November international break.
uh-huh.
So decision day is the 7th, then you have an international break from the 9th and the 17th. So your playoffs are going to have to be on the return from the international break.
Correct.
There's no way they're doing best of 3 first round.
Absolutely not. That's the
They
biggest thing.
cannot.
That was the thing I was holding back. That was my biggest takeaway. Is there's
Mhm.
no way that they fit a best of 3 first round without just not having a traditional linear channel partner for MLS Cup. If they're putting
Yeah.
MLS Cup against football in December,
Right.
like later than it is already in December, I don't know how that works.
Plus, if you got Seattle or Minnesota or Toronto hosting, there have been MLS Cups in Toronto in December before, so
There have.
it does happen. It's just really cold.
Okay, let's be
So-
real. Let's be realistic. Is Toronto winning MLS Cup next year?
No,
Phil?
no. I
Place
mean,
your-
it's
place your bet
hypothetical.
roll.
We could, but Minnesota. I mean,
Maybe.
Seattle. I mean,
Maybe.
Seattle's not a fun place to be that time of year. The other thing I think too is maybe this is the year they dump the play-in game. Maybe they just go 1 through 8 because play-in game takes another 3-4 days
Yeah.
out of the calendar. So
I think you just go top 8 in both conferences and call it a day.
Yep.
In
Yep.
advance of the Blitz season, which I'm calling it the Blitz season now because as much as I don't enjoy American football, I did enjoy the video game NFL Blitz because it worked completely differently than actual American football in that everything was constantly moving and it was actually fun for me. I want to think of that shortened season as the Blitz season because it's going to be super high stakes. It's going to be super high energy, everything that it's been sold to be. I think that's got a lot of potential. I don't feel like this is much of a stretch, but I think 2026 is going to be, it's going to be tough. It's going to be a stamina endurance fest. It just, the craziest thing about it to me is looking at October for not just Austin, but various other teams where, you know, where do you squeeze the extra games in? Where? I just don't know.
Yeah. Well, we will, I'm sure, in time learn all those things. But I hope in the meantime that you've enjoyed the speculation. You've enjoyed us like pondering this in real time. Anything else you want to add about the schedule? Any observations? I know that you were looking at Montreal's schedule. You were sending me some stuff there.
Yeah,
It seems like they got a lot of home games in February and March.
they have no home games in February and March, it turns out. And that's historically how it's been because they can't.
Yeah,
Going
right.
back to a lot of the complaints that I fielded, sometimes in threads with Andrew Wiebe of all people, believe it or not, was fans of Northern teams proclaiming that this was going to be the doom of everything, that their teams were going to be forced to play in 0-degree weather. And it was the end of soccer in North America and all this other stuff. And looking at the schedules that dropped, again, you're seeing the second half of a season being played first, but this to me looks like the way the new MLS calendar is going to play out. And for those Northern teams that are used to not playing home games at all or playing very chilly home games as early as it's safe to in February and March, those teams can finally host home openers with the new schedule
On opening weekend.
on opening weekend instead of 7 weeks later. And
Right.
to me, that in and of itself is huge. Also looking at Montreal's schedule, one of the biggest advantages they would have, again, if you rearranged things so that, you know, they were playing the second half of their season first and the first half of their season second, look at those home games in April and May. You know, of course, that'll be shifted up to late March and April. I would speculate that you're looking at those Northern teams having the biggest advantage you could hope for in that final stretch of games, which is having that beneficial schedule of maybe all home games in the month of April leading into decision day. Having that when people are fighting for position on the table, fighting for position for the playoffs, fighting for seed position even, that to me is so much more valuable than starting to deal with inclement weather in non-climate adjusted stadiums like Stade Saputo in Montreal. I would take what this year's new schedule represents in a heartbeat compared to what they've been facing. But hey, that's me. What do I know?
You're welcome, Northern teams.
You're welcome, the North.
All right. I guess that wraps us up for this real emergency podcast that we have done. But do want to put this on the radar. There's a new emergency tangent theme song in the works, and there's a new emergency tangent percolating. So, in a few weeks' time, we might drop something completely unexpected. You're not going to see this coming, but it's going to be great. We'll have another probably emergency podcast coming soon because, again, roster decisions are due November 26th. A lot of teams have done them. Maybe
Less than
they'll
7
drop
days
it in
from
the
now.
middle of Maybe they'll drop it in the middle of Media Cup on Friday, which would be like incredibly rude. They've got till next week. They've got till the 26th. So it is coming, but it just hasn't come yet, even though a ton of other teams have already dropped theirs. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that's like a sign that they're trying to make some things happen behind the scenes or if they're just maybe just sitting on it, but could be interesting.
The only thing I was going to mention about Media Cup is that sadly, my beloved Listos United, my team for the last couple of years, we lost our star scorer, Hernan. He's
on our
betrayed
team.
us. He's betrayed his childhood team and gone over to Verde FC with the villainous Phil West. But you know who we got in trade is Bob Ballou, the lifetime leading scorer in the Media Cup. So I'm just saying, man, watch out. Watch out.
Apparently, Bob and Hernan both are carrying some minor injuries, as we learned on the latest We Are Austin TV podcast, where they broke down the entire Media Cup roster, which is good for them.
You know,
They just called me famous. They did not call me good or anything like that.
I didn't pay attention to it because as a player, I don't do media appearances. I don't do media availabilities. My comment is no comment.
I don't pay attention to what they're saying about me, right?
You know, you guys are just out there spreading BS about me in the tweets, and I'm not gonna participate. That's just how I am as a player who wears his sunglasses at all times.
This is the best thing I've heard in the history of the 8 years I've been on this planet.